Hey, good afternoon. This is Scott with TerraGo. Believe people are going to start coming into the webinar. We're going to try to start right at 1 o'clock Eastern, which is about a minute from now. I see people filing in, so stand by and we will be right with you. Thanks. Hi, good afternoon from Atlanta, Georgia, everyone. Thanks for attending. We still have people trickling in. I just wanted to do a couple of quick housekeeping items for us. Um, so on the bottom of your screen or the window that you're viewing the webinar in, there's a chat option. I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar with Zoom, but the audio has been muted. So if you have some questions during the presentation and the demonstration, if you could go ahead and just type those questions in that chat pod, I'll try to monitor that as best I can, and we will go ahead and answer those accordingly. If we don't have any answers for you, obviously we'll get back in touch with you. Um, so this on the webinar, I'm joined by a couple of people from TerraGo, Madison Basil, who runs some of our marketing work out in LA. She helped pull all of this together for us. And also John Mueller, who is one of our senior project managers. There are two sides to the TerraGo business, and John's a project manager running our field ops side projects with organizations like Southern Company and uh, some other folks out in the Midwest. But he stays really busy on that side of the business, but has also been with TerraGo for well over 15 years. So is quite familiar with our GeoPDF business, and serves as my resident technological expert for the demonstrations and webinars. Um, and of course, myself, Scott Lee, I manage our federal defense and intelligence business, um, but all other aspects. We have customers across many different vertical markets, and I manage that business. The defense and intelligence piece is just one of the larger parts. And I didn't want to make my signature block extremely long, but um, thanks for attending. I'm going to throw a couple of slides at you real quick. This webinar is to follow up on our activity at the Geo Week event. There were, John, if you can hit that next slide for me, there were well over 3,000 attendees to the event in 2025 this year. If you were able to make it or unable to make it, um, I highly encourage attendance at this event. Very different attendees from the geospatial architecture, engineering, construction, and infrastructure industries. A big presence was seen, just my observation on the drone side. In that market, a lot of digital twin work, and that included several LiDAR organizations. I'm quite familiar with LiDAR technology, and so a few years ago, we worked with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the Special Operations Command down in Tampa, Florida, because they had a problem with delivering all of the LiDAR data that they had collected, being able to just disseminate it so someone can make an informed decision. So it's nice to see that continues to persist across the industry. And we're able to help out several of our customers and partners with that problem set. There were some key takeaways. Um, it says 3 takeaways, and I read this article from Matt Collins, who always does a really good job of summarizing events that we attend. Um, the first one was it's all about technology, but it's also about the people and collaboration. That coincides with the second item about people and being able to attract young talent and new talent to our industry in the spatial space, geospatial, AEC, and infrastructure. Um, and then the third thing was quite compelling was to actually start with a use case and a problem, and then being able to fit or identify a technology that's going to be able to help you with that problem specifically. Personally, I believe that we do have a solution here with our 3D GeoPDF capabilities to solve a problem, which is being able to deliver elevation type data, LiDAR data, um, digital elevation models to a user community that wouldn't traditionally have access to that type of content. So those takeaways, one of those takeaways specifically, I think that TerraGo can help address. Again, I highly recommend attending the event. It was really cold this year, but in the past it hasn't been quite as cold. I think we got down to about 6 degrees in Denver during the event this year. Next year, it will be on between the 16th and the 18th of February in the same location. That's downtown Denver at the Convention Center. A nice facility. And of course, it's Denver, so it's a nice place to be. Plenty of good food and times with your colleagues and people that are like-minded. Next slide, please, John. If you don't know a whole lot about TerraGo, I wanted to provide you with a brief history here. We were founded in 2005 from an organization called Latent Graphics, and we figured out a way to encode geospatial information inside of a PDF. And it was identified as actually the first method for delivering that type of content. We trademarked the term GeoPDF. So GeoPDF, the GeoPDF team is part of TerraGo. Again, on the other side of our business, we do have a compelling technology for smart cities type implementations with smart streetlights, gas meters, and help with that field operations type application. That's been going strong for about 5 years now, and encourage you to visit the website if you're in that space as well. The key capability here is we're able to deliver geospatial information to anyone, anywhere. We do some great things with compression technologies, focus on being able to get organizations to deliver content that is easy to use and intuitive. We leverage the free Adobe Reader. And again, with another technology we have available, it's called the GeoPDF toolbar. And that GeoPDF toolbar plugs in to the free Adobe Reader. The toolbar is free as well. And so anyone inside of your organization or outside of your organization has access to the content that you're creating. We're talking specifically about 3D technologies today, but one of our core capabilities is a plug-in technology to the Esri ArcGIS Pro application. We have a plug-in to that capability as well as to BAE's Socket GXP platform as well. We actually turned 20 this year, which is fantastic accomplishment for the organization. I've managed to be here for about 18 years now, so seeing the growth in the organization is really compelling and fantastic. Again, we did create and invented the GeoPDF technology on the Adobe platform, and it continues to evolve. We actually just performed a new release today to address some other requests from our customers. So at the end of the presentation, you'll have my contact information, or you should have my contact information already. If you would like evaluation versions of any of our capabilities that I'm discussing and John's demonstrating today, please reach out to us, and we can definitely help you out with that. We're not a GIS company, if you will. Our core competency is data dissemination and collaboration. Um, in our demonstration today, we'll be showing some of those capabilities, and John's going to show you how to aggregate elevation content and uh, imagery, or what we call a texture of some sort, over the top of that data, and be able to deliver that in that intuitive environment. Next slide, please, John. So why GeoPDF? So this is just a quick slide to let you know why our hundreds of customers and thousands of users around the world have chosen us to help them solve some of their problems. Um, I mentioned at the beginning about compression technology. It's really ideal for people who don't have high bandwidth or a dedicated internet connection many times. You can imagine many people are in remote locations and don't have access to a server to stream this large volume of data all the time. So because we leverage Adobe Reader, it is file-based and permits the full capabilities in a disconnected environment. We do deliver intermediate and finished products from both the Adobe environment, which we're leveraging a little bit today, the Esri environment, and the Socket GXP ecosystem. In the plugin to the ArcGIS environment or the Esri environment, all of these products can be layered, so users can actually have access to their own individual map instead of, while you deliver 25 or even up to 50 layers in a single product, users can intuitively turn those layers on and off so they actually have their own customized map or end product. This term geosuspicious is stolen with permission from Lieutenant Colonel Brian Dodd in the United States Army, and his focus is being able to deliver these types of mapping products to people who understand that they need access to geospatial, but don't have the bandwidth or the capability necessarily time to learn all of the intricacies involved with a GIS type system or a CAD-based system. So again, we make things intuitive in the Adobe Reader, small files as well, small file sizes. We do support 3275, I believe, reference systems. So if you're sharing data, we have a lot of international clients. And again, I said earlier, a lot of our work is done in the defense and intelligence industry. So we share data across the Atlantic or Pacific, or down South America through the Gulf. And a lot of people don't necessarily work just in a longitude and latitude, or a military grid. They want to work in their own local projection. So we do support that. So it makes it easier for the global sharing of that content. And again, it leverages software it's already installed, the free Adobe Reader, or if a user has the Adobe Acrobat Professional suite, that GeoPDF toolbar works in that environment as well. We do deliver some, again, going back to the geosuspicious term, we deliver the products so that people have some key geospatial capabilities to be able to take measurements or to freeze a coordinate. So it makes the end user answer their own questions at the end of the day, instead of coming back and forth and asking an analyst, either a geospatial person or a remote sensing person, questions all of the time and not allowing you to necessarily do your work. They can start to answer their own questions, and it mitigates those requests and everybody has some basic tools. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick snapshot, obviously not all inclusive, but gives you an idea of some of the vertical markets that we actually work in. And these are many of our partners and customers. It ranges, as you see, all of those different verticals. And next, John. So a little bit more about what we're here to talk about today, the 3D GeoPDF Composer. It is an advanced tool to create products that an end user can interact with. They can actually spin the model around itself. We're using Adobe for something that it wasn't necessarily designed to do. Historically, they did work a lot with models, 3D models, but it was predominantly in the CAD space. They do still support that to a certain degree. What we have done is encoded the geospatial information inside of that model as well. So a user can share and collaborate on that data itself, and ask more intelligent questions, if you will. It's perfect for these different markets and these industries, emergency response, engineering and urban planning, defense, obviously. The GeoWeek event wasn't geared specifically toward one individual. As I said, there are multiple industries that were represented there, but it's when you are trying to deliver content, complex content, to a large user community. It's ideal for that use case. Next slide, please. We do support high resolution data, 3D terrain and map rendering. A multitude of elevation data types are supported to include point cloud, LAS, DIM, DTED, TIFF. I believe there may be another couple that we support as well. For producing these products, John's going to go through this process itself, but we've tried to make it as simple as possible and in a wizard-driven way. While we're doing that, while we're performing that process, there are a lot of things that are going on in the background, more specifically with LiDAR content, to do some intelligent decimation of that product so that we can bring our file sizes down a little bit more. We actually do some decimation of the raster data as well, but you do have control of those parameters when you're performing the process itself. Again, it allows the user to rotate and zoom and explore the environment without any sort of specialized and often expensive geospatial or remote sensing software. Again, the end user only needs the free GeoPDF toolbar and the free Adobe Reader. So imagine how many more users you're going to be able to open your data up to in that instance. On the next slide, we talk a little bit about sharing those products via email or cloud storage up in the cloud. Many of our products can be kept under 20 megabytes in file size. John's going to be working with some larger data sets today, so the file sizes are going to be a little bit larger, and you'll be able to see that. But you have the control of what your file size is going to look like by the parameters that you set when you perform the process itself. Again, no need for sophisticated and often expensive software. It obviously enhances the ability for your team to work together, and to get more return on investment for the data collect that you have actually performed, if it's LiDAR content specifically in aerial photography. It's a huge expense. I have several friends in the industry. I've been in the industry for well over 25 years now, which dates myself. But the process and the cost associated with flying that type of data can be really high. And to be able to deliver that data in an intuitive way to the shareholders and the people who actually made the investment in the data collect itself would be a huge return. Always seems to be for us. On the next slide, the products themselves can be created directly within the Socket GXP environment. BAE has been a tremendous and fantastic partner for us over the past over 15 years for sure. So we've implemented our SDK, which John is going to talk about a little bit with you, to create 3D GeoPDF products directly out of the Socket GXP environment. And that's a licensing event directly inside from BAE Systems. If you want further information about that, I'll be happy to connect you with a representative from BAE. I know the majority of the team over there, and they're great to work with. So what we are going to discuss today, and John's going to demo, are creating these 3D GeoPDF products directly out of the Adobe Acrobat Professional application. And using the tool that is going to be used is this 3D GeoPDF Composer product. And that Composer product, it doesn't just create 3D products. There are several other functions that are included inside of this. For the sake of time, excuse me, for the sake of time, we're going to just focus on the 3D generation capability. I talked about file formats, and John will go through and show you some of those options as well. And again, it's all about collaboration and getting the most value out of what has been invested from your elevation data and your imagery. Just one more slide. A bit redundant. They can interact on field deployed devices. All they need is the free Adobe Reader. I mentioned the GeoPDF toolbar, the free GeoPDF toolbar. It is not absolutely required to have the free GeoPDF toolbar installed. So you can still deliver or post these 3D GeoPDFs to your SharePoint or share them via email without someone having the free GeoPDF toolbar. The GeoPDF toolbar is a value add that lets them do additional things inside with the GeoPDF itself. Again, there's no internet connection required, making it easy or ideal for your field users and people who are not connected in a consistent way. And again, perfect for military applications, construction, to be able to understand what has actually, or what the relationships are between your imagery and your elevation data. With that, I'm going to turn it over to John and ask him to go through the process. He has a couple of examples that he's going to show you today. And at any time, please go ahead and fill or put any questions inside of the chat bot, and we'll let John take it from here. And then I'll close it out in a few minutes when he's done.
All right. Thanks, Scott. As Scott mentioned, my name is John Mueller. I'm a project manager here at TerraGo. And what we're going to talk a little bit about today is the Composer toolbar that is within Adobe Acrobat. So if you're looking at, if you open up Adobe Acrobat, based on the version you've got some options to see our toolbar. Sometimes it'll be up in the upper left corner with this rest of these pull downs like File, Edit, View, Window, Help. And there we are with GeoPDF. And you get to our toolbars, our tools there. Or you can come over here and TerraGo will kind of show up as a possible ribbon that you can open. And it walks through some of the other things that we can do as far as our toolbar, geomarks, and then obviously here's that GeoPDF Composer tool that we're going to talk about today. Within the Composer tools that are available, there's a couple of other things that this can do. You can geo-register a PDF file as long as you know what the coordinate system is, and some anchor points, some lat and longitude locations that you can make out. And obviously, the more of those that you can add to the creation of this geo-registration, the more accurate that's going to become. You can do geo-registration as a single or in batch. Some of the other things you can do is this thing called a map assembler, where it'll actually stitch as a mosaic the GeoPDFs together. So kind of a cool little tool there. We can do a thing called mapbook creation. So those of you who are Esri users, whether it's desktop or Arc Pro, you're familiar with a thing called data-driven pages or a thing called map series. So you've got this group of GeoPDFs and an index sheet, and we can use the Composer tools to actually build a map book to allow for a more interactive use for your end user to kind of navigate through your files. But more importantly is this 3D GeoPDF creator. So this is the tool we're going to kind of focus on today. So if I click on that, you're going to go through a couple of dialogues to identify the sources and allow you to kind of set some the resolution and decimation of the sources that you select to generate this 3D visualization product called a 3D GeoPDF. So very first thing is I can select what kind of model that I want. So I can select either a surface model or the 3D point cloud. If you select the 3D point cloud, that source is going to be an LAS, so the LiDAR source, or X, Y, and Z data points. And that's going to generate something that looks like the description, a point cloud. So a ton of little points out there that create like a cloud. And from that cloud, you can zoom around, you can tilt and kind of look at the area. One of the things that we're still working toward on that is being able to actually display an X and Y and a Z. So right now it's strictly with the point cloud, it's strictly going to be a visualization and no interaction as far as X, Y, Z for the end user. But on the surface model, that's another thing. So on the surface model, you'd select an elevation and you would drape over the top of that either a raster source, be that a TIFF or a SID, or you could actually use another 2D, 3D, sorry, 2D GeoPDF. So you can actually use a couple of different sources there. So definitely the surface model is something a little bit easier for the standard user to navigate through. But the point clouds are kind of cool to look at. So anyway, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my model type, which is going to be the surface model. And I'm going to browse to the elevation file that I've got. And so these can be, again, these can be a couple of different things. I'm going to use basically a TIFF for this, but I've got options. So I can use a DEM, a DTED, LAS, Mr. SID, or a GeoTIFF as my elevation sources. So just to keep that in mind. Typically, we like to say as far as a size of data that we should try to contain to would be maybe a kilometer squared would be the largest that I would say, and a data source as far as data size, try to keep it under a gig per data source if you can. If you can clean up the data prior to this process, obviously that would be another big plus for the amount of time it's going to take to generate the 3D GeoPDF out of our tool. If you can also clip, the data sources to each other, that'll help. And then obviously also if you can do maybe some denoising on the elevation source, that'll help as well. So anything that we can do prior, if you've got a GIS tools to manipulate those data sources prior to the generation of the output, I think would be a good thing. So I went ahead and selected my elevation file, and inside of here now I can kind of adjust the level of detail. So depending on the data source, I can reduce that detailed reduction from 100 down to something that the quality of the elevation visually and then compared to something that you might want to use for analytics are going to be two different things, right? So you might have very good elevation data, very accurate, but visually you can step down from that accuracy to something that's maybe, let's say, half of what of the accuracy that you've got, and still provide output to an end user that's very useful. So there's no really magic number here as far as the level of detail. It's really dependent upon your data source and how large and accurate that thing is will help to kind of determine And just to maybe you're going to want to run through this a couple of times and get kind of the sweet spot on the data sources that you've got. So for now, I'm going to use this 50 as my magic number, and I'm going to hit next here.
Yeah, I think it's important that we understand this will affect your file size as well. I don't know if I missed that, John, for being able to deliver the content. So you, again, like John said, there is no magic number. You just have to kind of find the sweet spot for when you're developing the product itself.
Exactly. Thanks, Scott. So I'm going to go ahead and hit next here. Now it's going to ask me for either my image or my GeoPDF to drape over the elevation. And so I can say I don't want to drape any imagery over it. So that'll generate like a bare earth kind of look and feel, kind of grayscale output that you can provide. So if you don't have the any kind of source that you could drape over the top, but you do want to visualize the elevation that you've got, that's a good option. I'm going to use a couple of different things we're going to walk through. First, I'm going to walk through is the use of a GeoPDF, a 2D GeoPDF, and I've actually downloaded that from the USGS Topo store. So when you select a 2D GeoPDF, you're going to notice that we can, for a standard raster, you can actually adjust the bands, the red, green, the blue. You can apply a histogram and you can say, hey, I want a standard deviation. With the GeoPDF as a source for draping, those will gray out, so those aren't an option. But what is an option is this next window where I can set the DPI. So that's the dots per inch. That's the resolution of the data based on an inch of the map that's visualized. So it's more of a resolution thing. So again, typically that 300 DPI is a good number for an output. Depending on the source that you've got, whether it's a really old source that you're using or if it's something that's fairly new, you can adjust this DPI based on that. But again, these, like Scott said, adjusting there's no magic numbers for these. So you have to kind of play with these values to see what the output looks like and increase or decrease that to impact file size compared to resolution of the output. You'll have to find your sweet spot so that you can send that out to your end users. So that's the GeoPDF options. If I come in here and I say, well, actually, I do have a source that I can use for as a TIFF. I can come in here and then I can say, all right, well, I can adjust the band combination. So the RGB or red, green, blue, I can set those bands to whatever combination I'd like there. And Scott Lee is a pixel guy, and he's, like you said, he spent some time on that imagery side of the world. So he can have he'd probably like to play with these band combinations to get you some unique output. And then obviously we can also apply a histogram stretch to help with the contrast of the output, make things a little bit more crisp. And there's a standard deviation you can set there as well. So if I hit next here, the next thing on the list of things to do is the down sample strategy of the overall of the end product. So what we do here is there's three simple options. There's either the fastest processing that we would allow. There's a balance for speed and processing, and then there's the better quality. And so basically these are three different algorithms that we apply to downsampling the sources that were input. And so typically we set the balance, speed, and performance. You've also got this slider here, and it kind of acts the same way as it did on the elevation, where you can adjust the decimation of the raster that you're draping over it, depending on the resolution. And again, I'd probably leave it. I think by default, we set it to 50. I like to kind of bring it back up a little bit more to like 75. But again, there's no sweet spot here. So you're going to have to kind of play with these settings based on your sources and figure out what the best end product, what these settings might be. And then I'll turn on denoise, and denoise is typically applied to the elevation. It'll get rid of the highest and the lowest values. So to basically, like it suggests, it's going to get rid of some of that noise. And so, you can toggle that thing on or off. If you feel confident that you've already completed all the processing that you need to do on the elevation, then there's no need for us to do any kind of denoise on it. Then you can obviously turn that piece off. But again, this would be some more downsampling strategies and details. And all of these settings that we're talking about, like Scott mentioned, are going to they're going to directly relate to the size of the file, of the output file that's going to get generated, and the time it takes to create it. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this as balance, speed, and processing. I'm going to set my level of detail to 75, and I'm going to hit next. I'm going to turn off denoise, and I'm going to hit next. And then finally, one of the things that we can also do is we can say, well, I've got this massive image. I've got this really large elevation, and right now they don't clip to each other. They don't share the same extent. So we can actually say, hey, I want to clip the image to the dim, or I want to clip the raster that I selected to drape over my elevation to each other, so that based on the extent of my image, I don't have this massive area that's the elevation that's outside of that, or vice versa. I've got this massive elevation, and then I've just got this very small raster that I can actually denote some features on. So again, I typically try to clip the sources to each other prior to running through this tool, and that actually does help with how quickly it will run through. So for my options, I'm going to say do not clip, but again, it's based on the sources that you've got and how confident you are with those sources and what needs to happen. At the air, I'm going to go ahead and click next, and then I can save the 3D GeoPDF as a file name and a location. And then across the top, we add like a little spot where we can say, hey, add a little title. And I can just say, hey, this is my 3D GeoPDF. Whoops, I can learn how to type. So that this title will show up on the model in the file. I can show you that in a little bit. So I just browse to my location. So there's my output, and I hit OK, and then I can hit finish, and it'll generate. So based on all of the settings that you've just done, you'll get an output that is going to look a little bit like this. So this is the raster. And when you open it up, it takes a little bit for it to run through like each file. Like I said, it takes maybe on something that is, you've set like a balanced or fastest. You've set the sampling to like 55 or 75, something like that. These things can run for a couple of minutes, and it could run for 5 to 8 minutes a piece, just depending on the size of the sources and the settings that you've done. But as an output, you can see as if I move my mouse around the lower corner, the lower side of the file, you see a longitude, a latitude, and you see an elevation. So and those are in meters. So if I use my mouse here, and then I can tilt the model, I can zoom in, I can pan around. Depending on where I drop my mouse at, I see my latitude, my longitude, and I see my elevation. So that's the raster image over an elevation. You get the same type of experience with a USGS quad sheet as well. So on the USGS quad that I've got, based on the neat line of that GeoPDF, we will apply, we'll use the contents of the neat line and we drape that over the elevation. So again, I've got typical USGS product. We'll show you a lat and a long. With the 3D side of things, you'll see the elevation when I tilt the model, and then you also see now the elevation value, the Z. So I can come in here and start zooming in. I can now tilt the content. And a cool thing about the USGS obviously is, you know, we'll take the content of the topo, which is usually imagery and the topological details, like the contours, the trails, the roads, the labels, and we burn that all together into a raster that is then draped over the top of the elevation. So I can see here that, you know, this and this is the kind of just north of Los Angeles, where a lot of the forest fires had affected the landscape. So you kind of see some of the terrain that they've got to deal with to try to get up there to fight these fires, these wildfires that are going on. Some of the other pieces of this, if I go back to the raster, and if I can go into my GeoPDF toolbar, I can actually use a thing called GeoMeasure, so I can look at the length. And this is also could possibly be used as kind of a poor man's line of sight. So I know between, let's say, this peak and whoop, that went kind of crazy, and this peak over on the bottom of that, I get, you know, it's a length of a little more than a mile. If I come over to, let's go back here. I can set the light. I can set that the different lighting on this as well, to kind of show the you know, how I can affect, like, maybe daylight or nighttime. There's all sorts of other things in here from Adobe that you can do, red, green, and blue lights, no lights at all, that kind of thing on the interaction. But if I get back to the GeoMeasure tool, I can use this to actually have, like I said, like a line of sight. So as the red line kind of breaks the plane of the model, that gives you kind of an idea of line of sight. Scott?
That's perfect, John. The line of sight terminology, you know, can mean a lot of different things to different people. And so in a lot of industries, they want to take into account, you know, how far you are above the ground, to where you could actually see and get more accurate information. Again, I want to reiterate that we are focused on collaboration and sharing content. We do give some geospatial tools, but we're not an analysis company, if you will. It's data dissemination and collaboration, and let that end user ask those more intelligent questions, or try to answer their own questions. So from a line of sight standpoint, I like to term that capability more of a vertical obstruction type tool set. If you need a viewshed analysis, then the tools to use for a viewshed type application are obviously going to be an Esri tool set, a socket tool, or another, your favorite open source GIS tool, to actually perform that. Now, you could actually burn those vectors into that raster as well. So if someone wants to ask, they can ask a more intelligent question, such as, what can I see from this location? And I am, you know, 6 feet above the ground. so they can ask a more intelligent question, get a more accurate and supporting answer from the analyst, as opposed to going back and forth 100 different times to try to get the right answer. And the analyst could burn that vector content directly into the 3D GeoPDF, so you have a representation on a GeoPDF product.
Yeah, some of those that what just Scott just mentioned is TerraGo's ability to burn that content into the raster. I want to show you this. So what I just showed you was the through Adobe Acrobat was TerraGo's GeoPDF Composer tools. We also do have an SDK. So if you've got if you want to do these one at a time, you'd use Adobe Acrobat and TerraGo's Composer tool. But if you've got folders of content, and you're going to be doing this, hundreds of times with raster and elevation, you could use TerraGo's SDK. So through our SDK samples that we've got, we can we have this index sheet. It's basically another map book that we might be able to utilize. But as I click on the link, it's now going to open up the 3D version of those sources. And with their SDK, we can actually create this this template that the 3D model is then injected into. So we can do some more things with marginalia, like where we want text and how we want it to look. But then we also can say, all right, well, I've got this shapefile of what Scott just mentioned of these, let's say these buildings. So I want you to take the raster, take the elevation, and I want you to burn in those simple geometries, whether it's points, lines, or polygons, and represent those on the, basically it's a footprint of the building that's laid on the elevation. So again, that's just some of the other things that we can utilize with our 3D tools that we've got.
Yeah, the SDK is an extremely powerful capability there. Um, and it's used primarily for automation. And like John said, we want to make the process of that dissemination much easier, much simpler. And so with the SDK, we can automate many of those processes for creating products. The being able to visualize that 3D content, I think, is a game changer when it comes to sharing and again getting the ROI that you need or that you want to see and leadership would want to see out of the data collects and data acquisitions that you actually have ongoing inside of an organization. Again, can save tremendous amount of time and improve the communication across teams. I guess we'll go ahead and just throw that last slide up, John. I've been able to answer a couple of questions as we've gone through about being able to import GeoPDF products back into ArcGIS. Those are things that are definitely available or within the realm of capabilities and is actually something that we did in Legacy. Our Legacy plugin to ArcMap. That capability has not transitioned to ArcGIS Pro, but it is on our roadmap. Just in full disclosure there, I'm unable to give you a good time on that. We have a lot of things that are going on, but it's definitely on the roadmap. Martin asked about limitations on input data and or size, spatial extent. I have not specifically run into any huge limitations there. You're going to see performance issues though, especially in the rendering, because Adobe traditionally they were dealing with small mechanical engineering drawings when they were working on with 3D models. So these are small models, and we're completely pushing the limits of the amount of content and data that we're putting inside of a PDF. So you're going to run into some performance issues uh, in our testing, usually, and it's hard. I want to say usually, but that's probably not the accurate term either. Um, in our testing and our best practices, we have come up with we want to keep file sizes to where they're able to be emailed or easily pulled down from a SharePoint or from the cloud somewhere. And those generally are about 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers in surface area. You do have to remember that will vary as well based on the the variances in terrain because you have a lot more points that could be collected, or not necessarily a lot more points, but in a flat area that is contiguous, you don't have to have as many triangles, if that makes sense. From a mathematical standpoint, we can eliminate thousands of the triangles across a water body. So again, it's a trial and error kind of thing, Martin. Um, and just encourage that going back and forth and trying to figure out what is needed. Uh, let's see. There was another question about being able to create GeoPDFs from raster data specifically, and we have a product called GeoPDF Publisher for raster. And I can make that information available for you as well. That's a standalone tool that will just ingest an imagery format, IMG, TIFF, um, Mr. SID, NITF, ADRG, CADRG. I think there are about 7 or 8 different imagery formats that will handle, but TIFF is generally what's most used. And just identify your input file size. And there's some preferences. Again, we give you control and push go, and you get a GeoPDF of that raster data set. So again, with a GeoTIFF, we can see 20 or 30 to 1 on a compression. So it can make that imagery data much more manageable. And we have several of our defense and intelligence customers that use that product. As you can imagine, and with the plethora of imaging satellites that we have available, and air breathers as well. There's a lot of imagery data, and being able to share that information or that content with someone is paramount, especially when they're in a disconnected environment. Or again, I think it's really important to deliver return on investment from capturing this data and being able to share that information with your constituents and inside or outside of the organization. With that, uh, ran a little bit longer than I anticipated, but if there are some other questions about data or information and some pricing information, if you would like pricing information or more content on the ability to create 3D GeoPDFs, or the ability to use our raster tool or our plugin to ArcGIS Pro or Socket, please feel free to get in touch with me. I'd be your primary point of contact. Um, get in touch, and I want to say thanks again for attending today. I hope you found it insightful. And if there's anything that we can do for you in the future, please let us know. We will be attending a couple of other events later throughout the year, and Madison does a great job of letting everybody know where we're going to be when we're going to be there. So thank you, Madison. Thank you for that, and thank you for helping organize this. Thanks, John, for your in-depth knowledge. I really, as always, I appreciate you, buddy. And we'll go ahead and close it out. Thanks again. Y'all have a good rest of the day.
All right. Thanks, everybody.